It was a quiet morning in Makati. Not the kind of quiet that lulls you into comfort, but the kind that feels borrowed, fragile, like glass. The streets outside buzzed with muted life, the hum of early traffic tangled with the scent of diesel and pan de sal. Inside the small cafe on the corner of Makati Avenue, the world was slower. Time moved in teaspoons. Manny Pacquiao sat alone at a table near the window, his back turned to the street. No entourage, no security detail, no cameras, just him. A plain white shirt, a soft grey cap pulled low, and a cup of black coffee cradled between calloused hands that once shaped history with every punch. His eyes, half-shaded, stared into nothing, or maybe into everything he had fought through. A fighter's rest is never full. It's a pause, not a finish. The baristas behind the counter spoke in hushed Taglish, careful not to disturb the legend sipping coffee less than 10 feet away. Everyone recognized him. Of course they did. But no one dared approach. There was a reverence to his presence, the kind normally reserved for holy men or old soldiers, those who had seen too much and spoke too little. He had fought wars on canvas, in Congress, in poverty, in prayer. What do you say to a man like that? Except one pair of eyes did not turn away. Joel stood behind the espresso machine, drying a ceramic mug with a trembling cloth. He wasn't supposed to be working that day. He had switched shifts. He wasn't sure why, just a feeling. He had seen Manny Pacquiao before on TV, on posters, on the walls of neighbors. But never like this, never this close, never this real. And today, of all days, he felt like the universe had drawn a line between them. It pulsed with urgency. He was 25, skinny, wiry, faded tattoo on his forearm barely visible under his rolled sleeve. He had the look of someone still building himself, still trying to outrun a childhood he didn't ask for. He had practiced this moment in his head 100 times. But now that Manny was here, alive and breathing, and completely unaware of what this moment meant, Joel froze. He watched the cup tilt. Steam drifted upward. Manny didn't check his phone, didn't scan the room. He was still, unbothered, like the chaos of the world simply orbited him without ever breaching his gravity. Joel stepped out from behind the counter. His apron was still on, stained with streaks of milk foam. His co-workers shot him warning glances. "What are you doing? Leave him be!" But Joel couldn't stop. His legs moved before his fear could catch up. He approached the table slowly, hands clenched and then released again and again. Pacquiao looked up, calm, curious. "Sir Manny," Joel said, voice barely steady. "Can I sit?" There was a pause. The cafe fell into deeper silence, the kind that bends time. Manny nodded once, then motioned gently to the chair across from him. Joel sat down. Up close, he could see the lines on Manny's face. Not the kind from age, but from weight. Weight of moments, weight of decisions, weight of legacy. Joel opened his mouth, closed it, then exhaled hard through his nose. "I've waited my whole life to talk to you," he said. Manny didn't speak, just waited. That was something people never mentioned about him, not his fists, but his patience. In the ring, he had danced with fury. Outside of it, he listened like a priest. "My name is Joel," he continued, "and this is going to sound strange, but I need to tell you something I've kept inside since I was a kid." Manny tilted his head slightly, not in skepticism, but in quiet attention. The city outside moved on. Cars honking, people shouting, vendors calling out orders. But in this corner, all that existed were two men and a cup of black coffee. Joel's voice grew steadier. "My father was a boxer too. Not famous. Not like you. Most people have forgotten him, except me." He paused. Then he said it. His name was Rogelio Santos, the Jaguar. You fought him in 1996. Small venue in Cebu. He never fought again after that night. Manny blinked once. The name hung in the air like a ghost. Joel's voice cracked. He was never the same. After the knockout, after you beat him, he told people it was just one loss, but inside something broke. He stopped training, started drinking, got mean, then quiet, then gone. Manny leaned back. The chair creaked slightly. Joel pressed on. He died 2 years later. Cirrhosis. I was 8. My mother did what she could, but I grew up angry. Angry at him. Angry at life. But mostly, angry at you. There it was, the wound laid bare. The cafe was still. Nobody dared move. Even the whir of the espresso machine seemed to hold its breath. Joel's hands were clenched again. I blamed you for everything. I watched your fights, every one of them, like they were evidence, proof that you'd taken something from me, from us. You kept winning. You became a god. And I was stuck in the same neighborhood, same pain. Manny's fingers tapped once on the porcelain cup, then stopped. He looked down, then back up. I remember him, he said softly. Joel stared. I remember the fight. He came in swinging hard, fast hands. I knew I had to finish it quick. One good punch and I saw the light leave his eyes. After, in the locker room, he gave me something. Joel blinked. Manny continued, voice lower now. A small medal, St. Christopher. He said, "You're going to go far, just don't forget the ones you knocked down on the way." He reached into his shirt pocket, slowly, and pulled out a tiny, weathered silver medallion. Joel's breath caught. His throat tightened. I kept it, Manny said, all these years. There was no drama in his tone, just memory, just weight. Joel stared at the medal like it might burst into flame. He had never seen it, didn't even know it existed, and yet it was here, real, in the hands of the man who had shaped his life from the other side of the ring. My father gave that to you, he whispered. Manny nodded. Joel laughed once, dry, sharp, painful, a release, then wiped his face with his sleeve. I hated you, he said. I needed someone to hate, and you were always winning, always smiling. I wasn't smiling inside, Manny replied. Joel looked up. I was fighting for Rice, Manny said, for my family, for my country. I never wanted to destroy anyone, but I knew if I didn't win, I'd disappear, like so many others. Silence. Not heavy this time, but almost tender. Manny extended the medal across the table. I think he meant for you to have this, not me. Joel didn't move at first. Then slowly he reached out, his fingers brushing Manny's. The contact was brief, but in it a lifetime of anger began to unwind. He took the medal, held it close. For a second, he seemed like a boy again. Outside, the sun was higher. The light through the window fell directly on their table now. Warm, undeniable. Joel looked at him. What do I do with all this now? He asked. Manny looked back, then smiled, gently, almost sadly. Maybe, he said, you stop fighting ghosts. And for the first time in his life, Joel considered that maybe he could. The medal sat in Joel's palm like a memory made solid. He didn't move, not right away. The silver was dulled with time, edges worn smooth from being carried too long, too quietly. It had weight, not just the few grams of metal, but something denser, legacy, pain, the voice of a man whose absence had shaped every room Joel had ever entered. In that moment, the cafe around them faded. There were no customers, no clinking spoons, no low murmurs of other lives continuing nearby. There was only the ghost of Rogelio Santos, sitting in the space between father and son, champion and child, vengeance and forgiveness. Joel closed his fingers around the medal, knuckles whitening. When he looked up, something in his face had shifted. The rage was still there, somewhere, but it had shrunk, curled into a corner, like a wounded animal. What replaced it was harder to name. Confusion, maybe, or awe, or the raw beginnings of grief that had been locked away behind 2 decades of deflection. I didn't know he ever talked to you, Joel said, his voice rough like gravel underwater. He never talked to me. Not like that. Not about the fight. Not about anything really, just drank, sat in the dark. Then, one day, gone. Manny nodded slowly. His eyes were distant now, staring past Joel, past the walls, into whatever world fighters drift into when they start counting the battles that never made it to the ring. He didn't speak immediately, didn't fill the air with comfort or cliché. He let the silence breathe. Then he said, "I've thought about him more than once, especially after my first title. I remembered how he looked when I knocked him down. Not angry, not surprised, just hollow. Like he realized it all at once. What was lost, what he'd gambled, what wouldn't come back." Joel swallowed. He bet everything on that fight. We were broke. I remember my mother crying in the next room while he trained. He kept saying, "This is the one. After this, everything changes." He even bought me a new pair of shoes before he left, said I'd need them for school in the city. He looked down at the medal again, but nothing changed, except that he came back quieter, meaner. I hated those shoes. Manny leaned forward, hands folded on the table. "I was fighting for the same thing," he said. "Except I didn't have a family yet. I was the family. If I lost, we didn't eat. There was no plan B." Joel exhaled, short and sharp. "I used to wish you'd lost, just once. That maybe if someone had beaten you bad enough, you'd understand what we went through." "I did lose," Manny said. "Many times. Just not in the ring." The words landed like slow thunder. Joel looked up, but Manny's face didn't show the weight of them. His voice had carried something beneath it, something that couldn't be undone, only endured. "I lost years to exhaustion, to fear. I missed births, funerals. I gave speeches in Congress with broken ribs. I trained through fevers. I fought with my soul empty some nights, because I thought that if I stopped, everything would collapse." Joel stared. "But you won." Manny gave a faint smile. "Winning doesn't always fix what you lose to get there." The cafe was starting to move again. A couple walked in and sat near the door. Someone behind the counter began steaming milk, the hiss cutting across the hush, like a reminder that time hadn't stopped, even if it felt like it had. Joel rubbed his hands together. His fingers twitched with nervous energy. "I thought if I confronted you, I'd feel better. But now, I just feel like I'm holding someone else's story." "No," Manny said gently. "You're holding yours. You just didn't know how heavy it was until now." Joel stared down at the medal again. It didn't shine. It didn't glow. It was just a piece of metal. But he felt like he'd been dragging it through his whole life, even without knowing it existed. "What do I do with it?" he asked, almost a whisper. Manny was quiet a moment, then said, "That's up to you. You can throw it in the river, you can bury it, or you can carry it differently." Joel tilted his head. "Differently? Not as a weapon," Manny said. "As a lesson." Joel leaned back in his chair, his breath coming slower now. The fire in his chest, the one he'd nursed for years, fed by old photos, by stories from drunk uncles, by the silence his mother never explained, was dimming. Not gone, but different, flickering. Then, out of nowhere, a strange thing happened. Joel laughed. It wasn't loud, it wasn't joyful, but it was real. Like a release valve, finally letting out steam. "You know," he said, shaking his head, "if someone had told me when I was a kid that I'd one day sit across from Manny Pacquiao and talk about my dead father, I would have punched them in the face." Manny smiled, his first real one. "Then maybe you did inherit something from him." Joel laughed again, then caught himself. "He was good, huh?" Manny's eyes went soft. "He was better than most, but he didn't know how to lose." That hit deeper than Joel expected. He looked away toward the window, where the sun was now washing the sidewalk in amber light. "Neither do I," he said. "That can change," Manny replied. A beat, then another. Joel turned back to him. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." Joel hesitated. His voice lowered. "Why'd you keep the medal all this time?" Manny took a breath. "Because every time I looked at it, I remembered that fight. Not because it was hard, but because it reminded me what was at stake, for all of us. It kept me human." Joel nodded slowly. The words wrapped around something in him, something brittle. He felt it soften. Not heal, not yet, but soften enough to stop cutting. He looked at Manny again. This time not as a target, not as the man who ruined his father's dream, but as a man, a survivor, a reflection. Manny drained the last of his coffee. Then, casually, Almost as if it were nothing, he said, "Do you box?" Joel blinked. "What? You ever train? Gym? Sparring?" Joel shook his head. "Not seriously, I hit bags sometimes, nothing real." Manny nodded, then said, "Come train with me." Joel frowned. "Train with you?" "Yeah," Manny said, as if offering someone sugar for their coffee. "You've got the fire. You just need a direction. And maybe you need to learn how to fall and how to get back up." Joel stared, stunned. "You're serious?" "As a knockout," Manny said. Joel looked at the medal one last time, then slipped it into his pocket. It no longer felt like a shackle. He stood. So did Manny. No one in the cafe clapped. No one took photos. Life didn't pause to honor the moment. But something had shifted. Two lives, once separated by a single punch, had found each other again. Not through revenge, but through reckoning. As they walked toward the door, Joel asked, "What if I suck?" Manny grinned. "Then you'll learn. And if you fall?" Joel smiled back. "I get back up." Outside, the city pulsed with noise and movement, and everything that made it impossible to hear yourself think. But for Joel, for once, everything was quiet. And in that silence, a new story began. The gym wasn't what Joel expected. It wasn't flashy, wasn't polished, didn't have posters of champions lining the walls or neon lights announcing greatness. It smelled like sweat soaked into wood, of rubber mats that had seen too many falls, and the lingering sting of liniment oil. There was no music playing, only the rhythmic sounds of rope slaps, gloves hitting pads, bodies moving in practiced repetitions. There was discipline in the air, humility, a quiet kind of devotion that had nothing to do with fame. Manny led Joel in like he was introducing him to a chapel. No ceremony, no speech, just a nod to the trainer in the corner and a gentle push forward. "Start with jump rope," Manny said. "Feel your weight, feel your rhythm." Joel didn't protest. He didn't ask why or what came next. He just moved. The rope burned his calves after the first minute. His breath grew short, sweat bloomed across his back, but he kept going. There was something sacred in the simplicity of the motion. He didn't think, he just endured. Manny didn't hover. He moved around the gym, correcting others, offering quiet encouragements, laughing occasionally at a bad jab or a misstep. But his eye never left Joel for long. That was how the days began, and then the weeks. Each morning before sunrise, Joel was there. Each night he was too sore to think about anything but sleep. His body rebelled, then adapted, then hungered for the next push. He never asked if he was doing well, and Manny never said. It wasn't about praise, it wasn't about becoming a fighter. It was about stripping something away, peeling back the layers he'd built to survive, to avoid being crushed by the shadow of his father, the anger, the loss, the sense that he had come into a world already defined by defeat. But slowly, something else took shape inside him. Not pride, not yet, but purpose. He learned how to throw a jab that didn't waste energy, how to pivot with balance, how to protect his chin without flinching. He bled once, his nose. Manny handed him a towel and said nothing. The bleeding stopped. Joel kept going. On the 5th week, Manny brought him to the ring. "You ready?" he asked. Joel hesitated. "For what?" Manny smiled. "To fall." They sparred lightly at first. Joel's hands were quick but undisciplined, his footwork eager but imprecise. Manny moved like water, soft, controlled, endlessly dangerous. Then a moment of carelessness. Joel dropped his guard. Manny's left hand snapped forward, not hard, just enough. Joel went down. It wasn't dramatic. No blood, no blackout. Just the sharp thud of canvas and the crushing silence of a truth learned the hard way. He lay there for a few seconds, breathing fast. His heart thudded like a drum in his chest. Every cell in his body screamed to stay down. But then he heard Manny's voice, not loud, not commanding, just present. "Now get up." Joel rolled to his side, pushed himself to his knees, stood. Manny nodded once. That's the whole game. Later, Joel sat outside on the gym's low steps, wrapping his hand with ice. The sky above was purple with dusk. Manila's chaos drifted by, Jeepneys packed to the brim, children chasing plastic bags through alleys, the low hum of karaoke from a corner house. Life went on. Manny came out, sat beside him. "You're learning fast," he said. Joel gave a half smile. "I still got dropped." "Everyone does." There was a pause, long and comfortable. Joel finally asked, "Why me?" Manny didn't look at him when he answered. "Because you needed it." "And because I saw myself in your eyes." Joel stared ahead. "You still think about him, my father?" Manny nodded. "Some nights, when it's quiet. I remember how he looked in that ring, how he believed it was his moment. And I wonder if I took something I didn't need to." Joel turned. "You didn't, he gave it. He just didn't know how much it cost." The words surprised both of them. Joel had never said them out loud, never believed them fully. But now they felt true. Not because they erased the pain, but because they placed it in the right hands. He pulled the medal from his pocket. It had become part of his daily carry: keys, wallet, ghost. "I don't know what to do with this," he admitted. Manny watched him. "Keep it," he said. "Not for him, for you, to remind you where the anger ends." Joel didn't answer. He just closed his hand around it again. Weeks turned to months. Joel trained without expectation. He never asked to fight, never sought attention. The gym accepted him, not because of his connection to Manny, but because he showed up, every day. No ego, just work. One day, during mitt drills, the trainer pulled Manny aside. "He's got timing," the trainer said. "You thinking of putting him in the ring?" Manny shook his head. "Not unless he asks." But Joel never did. He didn't need to, because somewhere between the jump ropes and bruises, he had found what he came for. Not revenge, not vindication, but identity. He no longer looked at himself as the son of the man Pacquiao beat. He wasn't trying to resurrect his father's dream or avenge his fall. He had his own stance now, his own rhythm, his own name. One evening, after a long session, Joel stood at the edge of the ring staring at the ropes. He didn't climb in, just watched the younger fighters spar. He was breathing evenly, chest rising and falling with the same discipline he once lacked. Manny came beside him. "You're ready," he said quietly. Joel smiled. "Not to fight." "I know." Manny put a hand on his shoulder. "You remind me of why I started," he said, "and why I stopped." Joel looked at him. "Are you done for good?" Manny nodded. "There's nothing left to prove, but there's still a lot to teach." Joel extended a hand. Manny shook it. They didn't talk about the past anymore. It had served its purpose. It had brought them to this point. Two men once separated by pain and misunderstanding, now bonded by the strange grace of facing it head-on. In the months that followed, Joel began working with the younger kids at the gym, teaching them how to wrap their hands, how to plant their feet, how to fall without fear. He never called himself a coach, but the kids listened. Because he didn't talk like someone who had all the answers. He talked like someone who had lived the questions. One afternoon, while sweeping the gym floor, Joel stopped by the old shelf where personal items were sometimes left. Water bottles, wraps, cheap trophies. He placed the medal there, not hidden, not displayed, just present, a part of the story, not the end of it. And then he picked up the broom again. Outside, the sun set over Manila in deep oranges and pinks. The city moved on. Cars honked, radios played. Dreams rose and fell with every breath. But inside that little gym, something had changed. A fighter had fallen, a man had stood, and a legacy had finally found peace.